2 days ago, I finally got my hands on a file the government said didn't exist. The scariest killers aren't the ones in prison. They're the ones the government decided were too useful to lock up. His name, his real name, doesn't matter anymore. Because somewhere around 1974, it stopped existing. No death certificate. No court record. No paper trail. Just a social security number quietly retired, a personnel file shredded in a basement in Langley, Virginia, and a man who walked out of one life and into another, clean, funded, and completely free. What he left behind were 11 bodies. 3 of them were enemy operatives. 2 were foreign nationals considered complications. And 6 were people who were simply in the wrong place, at the wrong time, working for the wrong person. Ordinary people. People with families who still don't have answers. This is the story the government has spent 50 years making sure you never heard. Program Hollowpoint's stated purpose, the version told to the 3 congressmen who even knew it existed, was to neutralize foreign intelligence threats operating on American soil. What it actually became was something else entirely. Victim number 1 and number 2 were Soviet handlers operating out of a DC import company. Those killings, the program's architects would later argue, were justified. Wartime logic. Cold War necessity. Victim number 3 was a Cuban diplomat. His death was ruled a mugging. Victim number 4 was a journalist. A domestic journalist. A man named Raymond DeLuca who had been sniffing around a money laundering operation connected to a sitting senator. He was found in the Potomac in October 1971. The official ruling, accidental drowning. His recorder, his notes, his source list, gone. That was the moment Program Hollowpoint stopped being about national security and started being about something far more dangerous, convenience. By 1973, the man with no name had killed 11 people. Some were enemies of the state. Some were enemies of powerful men inside the state. The line between those two things had dissolved completely. He was earning a government salary, living in a modest apartment in Northern Virginia, and filing expense reports. A young FBI agent named Thomas Wickfield stumbled onto it by accident. He was investigating financial fraud, boring, routine work, when he noticed a pattern. 7 deaths over 5 years, all ruled accidents or unsolved homicides, all connected by one thread. Every victim had recently come into contact with a shell company called Meridian Consulting Group. Meridian didn't have an office. It didn't have employees on record. But it had a budget line that traced back, through 3 layers of financial obfuscation, to a discretionary fund inside the Department of Defense. Wickfield wrote up his findings and submitted them to his supervisor on a Friday afternoon. By Monday morning, he had been reassigned to a field office in rural Montana. His case file had been reclassified. And the man he'd been unknowingly circling, the killer, had already been called in for a meeting. Not an arrest. Not an interrogation. A transition briefing. In the spring of 1974, a man ceased to exist. His apartment was cleared out. His car was sold to a government auction under a fictitious buyer name. His bank accounts were closed. His fingerprints were scrubbed from every database that had them. A new identity was constructed, a complete life, backdated with documents, references, a work history, a childhood in a mid-sized Midwestern city that would have checked out under any investigation. He was relocated. Given a pension. Given a house. He lived in that house for decades. Neighbors described him as quiet. Friendly. He kept his lawn neat. He brought food to sick neighbors. He coached Little League for a while in the 1980s. He outlived most of the men who created him. Here is what we know for certain. Program Hollowpoint, or something operating under that function, existed. The Senate's Church Committee, which investigated illegal CIA and FBI operations in 1975, came close to it. Close enough that several documents in their archive are still, to this day, fully redacted. Not partially. Fully. Black pages. Raymond DeLuca's family filed a FOIA request in 2003. They received 47 pages. 43 of them were blank. Thomas Wickfield, the FBI agent who was reassigned to Montana, gave one recorded interview before his death in 2011. He said, and I'm paraphrasing carefully, "I was told, in no uncertain terms, that what I had found was above my clearance level. And that the healthiest thing I could do for myself and my family was to believe that." He believed it. The case file for Program Holoprint, under whatever name it's actually stored, remains classified under a national security exemption that doesn't expire until 2049. By then, everyone involved will be dead. That's not an accident. That's a design. Somewhere, maybe still alive, maybe not, there is a man who killed 11 people, was protected by the United States government, and was never once made to answer for it. His victims had names. They had families. They had people who still wake up at night wondering what really happened. And the official answer, the government's answer, the legal answer, the answer buried under 50 years of redactions and reclassifications, is silence. The scariest killers aren't the ones in prison. They're the ones who got a pension instead. 2 days ago, someone sent me a link. I'm still trying to figure out if I should have clicked it. What would you say if you only got one post, and someone was already reading it before you hit send? I need you to understand something before we go any further. I didn't go looking for this. It came to me through a Reddit thread that no longer exists. I've checked, other people have checked, someone even ran an archive crawl. Nothing. The thread is gone. The account that posted it is gone. Even the removal log that should show a mod deleted it is gone. But I saved the link before it disappeared. And I'd been staring at it for 2 days, trying to decide if writing this story is the smartest thing I've ever done, or the last thing I'll ever do. The link was 14 characters long. It ended in .onion. The forum was called once. No homepage. No login screen. No description of what it was or who built it. You clicked the link, and you were inside, immediately, with no buffer, no loading screen, no warning. Just a white page, black text, and posts. Thousands of them. The interface was stripped to almost nothing. No upvotes. No comments. No usernames. Just a small alphanumeric string that was different for every post, presumably generated from something unique to each user's session. No timestamps, except for one field that just said posted with a date. And at the top of the page, a single line of text in small gray font. You may post once. Read as long as you like. You will not be able to return. That was it. That was the entire rule set. Below it, a single empty text box. And a button that said send. The posts themselves were, I don't have a better word for this, confessional. Not in the dramatic way. In the quiet, hollow way that confessions actually are when someone is telling the truth. I let my brother take the blame for something I did when we were kids. He spent 4 years in juvie. He never recovered. I became a dentist. I have 3 children. I think about him every single day. The coordinates 44.2819 degrees north, 88.6237 degrees west. Look at the tree line on the south side. I'm sorry. I've been documenting my illness for 3 years. Nobody knows. When you find this, please tell my wife I wasn't scared at the end. I was, but please tell her I wasn't. If you're reading this from a government address, you're wasting your time. I already moved it. Thousands of posts. Each one a single moment. Each one from someone who came here, said their one true thing, and left. Or tried to leave. His name was Marcus Hale. 27 years old. Graduate student in computer science at a university in the Pacific Northwest. He had a blog, archived now, the original domain is dead, where he wrote about network security and what he called the anthropology of dark web spaces. Academic stuff, mostly. Dry. Careful. He found once in September 2019. What we know about what he did next comes from 3 sources. His blog posts, a series of Discord messages recovered by his roommate, and a thread on a cybersecurity forum where he posted his initial findings under the handle @nullrit_m. His first post about once was clinical. Curious. He described the interface, the architecture, his attempts to probe the server, which he said were cleanly and completely blocked in a way I haven't seen before, like the server knows what you're trying to do before you do it. He noted the sheer volume of posts, and said he estimated the forum had been active for at least 4 years based on date distribution. He did not post on the forum. Not yet. His second blog post, 5 days later, was different. The tone had changed. He wrote, "I've been going back every day. I know that contradicts what the site says, that you can't return. But I can. My session is persistent in a way I can't explain. I've tried clearing cookies, switching browsers, routing through different nodes. Every time I navigate to the URL, I'm back inside. Same session. Same empty post box. Like it's waiting for me specifically." He went back and forth about whether to post. His Discord messages showed the deliberation. A friend named Priya kept telling him not to. He kept saying he just wanted to understand what it was. "It's not a trap," he wrote to her at 2 a.m. on October 3rd. "It's more like a collection. Someone built something to collect last words. I don't know why yet, but I want to. That's the most terrifying sentence you've ever sent me," Priya replied. He didn't respond to that message. 3 days later, a post appeared on Once. The alphanumeric user tag matched the session string Marcus had documented in his blog, the same string that had persisted across his sessions for 2 weeks. He had finally posted. The post said, "I've been watching this place for 17 days. I think I understand what it is. It's not for last words. Last words are what you say when someone is listening. This place is for the things you say when you think no one is. I don't have a confession. I don't have coordinates. I just wanted to say, whoever built this, I see what you did. And I think it's the most human thing on the internet. That scares me more than anything else I've found here." It was, by any measure, a beautiful post. It was also not the last thing posted from his session. Marcus Hale was found dead on October 14, 2019. The official ruling was cardiac arrhythmia. He was 27, had no prior heart condition, and had passed a physical 8 months earlier. The medical examiner noted it was unusual but not impossible. There was no investigation. No autopsy beyond standard procedure. His roommate, a man named Derek, called Priya the next morning. Priya later described the conversation in a post of her own, on a different forum, one that's still accessible, one that I found, where she said Derek had told her something that didn't make it into any official account. When Derek found Marcus, the laptop was open. The screen was on. Everything else on the laptop had been wiped. Not crashed, not corrupted, wiped. Clean. As if it had just come out of a factory reset, except the operating system hadn't even fully reloaded. Just a white desktop. No files. No applications. Except for one open browser tab. Once. Still loaded. Still showing Marcus's session. Still showing his post. And below it, a new post. Same user tag. Posted October 17th. 3 days after Marcus Hale was declared dead. Priya didn't tell Derek what the second post said. She didn't tell anyone for almost 8 months. When she finally wrote about it, she said she'd kept it secret because she was afraid, not of whoever ran the forum, but of how the words made her feel. She said reading it was like finding a note in your own handwriting that you don't remember writing. The post said, "They already know your IP. They have known since you clicked the link. I tried to find the server and the server found me first. I tried to document the watchers and I became the document. I am post #4614. This is not a warning. Warnings are for people who still have a choice. This is just what the last thing feels like when it's actually the last thing. It feels exactly like the first thing. That's the part one didn't expect." Below it, one more line. In a different font, the only post on the entire forum in a different font, as Priya described it, 2 words. Thank you. I've been sitting with the link for 2 days. I've done everything Marcus did before he posted. Tried to probe the server. Hit a wall so clean it didn't feel like a wall. It felt like the absence of a wall. Like reaching for something that moves the exact moment your hand gets close. I checked the post count. The forum currently has 4,614 posts. Marcus was post 4,614. It hasn't updated since. Which means either the forum is dead, or it's waiting. The text box is still there. Still empty. The button still says send. I've written 4 different things in it, and deleted all of them. I want to tell you I'm not going to post. I want to tell you I'm smarter than that I know a trap when I see one, that I understand what happened to Marcus and I'm choosing differently. But here's the thing that I can't shake. The thing that's kept me awake for 2 nights. His post, the one from after he died, said it felt like the first thing. I've been trying to figure out what that means. And I think I finally do. I think it means that whatever once collects, whatever it's been harvesting from 4,614 people who came here with something true to say, it doesn't end with the post. The post is just where it starts. This section was added approximately 72 hours after the original post. The author did not edit. The account used to add it had been inactive for several years. Its password had been changed. The update reads, I found what I was looking for. The forum isn't a collection of last words. It's a collection of the people between the words. The silence before you hit send. That's what they wanted. That's what they took. If you're reading this, you've already been in that silence. You've already been between. Check your browser history. There will be a visit to a URL you don't remember clicking. Check the timestamp. It will be from 3 minutes before you found this story. End of document. The original author has not been reachable for comment. The link has been removed from this post. You should close this tab now. You probably won't. Once.onion has never been officially confirmed to exist. Which is exactly what they'd say if it did. Post count as of publication, 4,614. Check it yourself. If that number has changed, don't tell us. The soil on that island is still toxic. Not metaphorically. Not historically. Chemically, biologically, actually toxic. And every summer, 12,000 tourists walk across it in sandals, take photographs, and buy bottled water from a gift shop built on top of a mass grave. I know this because I was one of them. And I know what's underneath because I spent 14 months trying to find a map that showed what that island used to be called, before 1947, before the Americans arrived with their briefcases and their immunity agreements, and their very particular talent for making inconvenient things disappear. I'm a high school history teacher. I assign essays on the Nuremberg trials. I teach the chapter on Unit 731. I give my students primary sources and tell them that the worst thing about atrocities is how thoroughly ordinary the people who committed them were. I didn't know, until 14 months ago, that I had been teaching half the story. The half they let us teach. I want to be honest about the part where I almost convinced myself it was nothing. I spent 2 weeks doing exactly what a reasonable person would do. I cross-referenced the coordinates on the map against every publicly available Pacific cartographic database I could access. I contacted 3 colleagues who specialize in World War II Pacific history. I reached out to an archivist at the Naval History and Heritage Command in Washington. The archivist was helpful and prompt and told me that cartographic discrepancies in Pacific theater maps from that period were extremely common, due to wartime production pressures and imperfect geographic intelligence. She said islands were frequently mislabeled, relabeled, or omitted entirely from different map editions depending on their military relevance at the time of printing. It was a completely satisfying answer. I believed it for about 10 days. Then I found the photograph. It was at the bottom of a second envelope I'd missed on the first pass through the box, thinner, tucked inside a folded letter that turned out to be written in Japanese. The photograph was black and white, slightly overexposed, the way photographs get when someone is using unfamiliar equipment in unfamiliar light. It showed a low wooden building on flat ground. Jungle at the edges. A group of men in Imperial Japanese military uniforms standing outside it in a loose group. And in the foreground, stacked with a neatness that made my stomach drop before my brain had fully processed what I was seeing, wooden crates. Dozens of them. Each one stenciled with the same symbol. A symbol I recognized from the Unit 731 documentation I used in my classroom. The biohazard precursor. The Japanese military's internal marker for biological material. On the back of the photograph, in my grandfather's handwriting again. Facility 9. March 1947. After meant after the war. After the surrender. After the immunity agreements. Whatever had happened on that island, my grandfather had been there to see what was left of it. The most dangerous secrets aren't the ones locked in vaults. They're the ones that get handed down in boxes to people who don't know what they're holding, until it's too late to unknow it. The immunity agreements are real. That part isn't fiction, isn't conspiracy, it's documented, declassified, taught in graduate programs if not in high school classrooms. After the war, American intelligence officers made a calculation. The scientists behind Unit 731, Japan's biological warfare research program, responsible for experiments on an estimated 3,000 prisoners at their primary Manchurian facility, possessed data that the United States wanted. Data on human responses to plague, cholera, anthrax, frostbite, vivisection, parasitic infection. Data that could not have been ethically gathered any other way, because gathering it required killing people. The arrangement was straightforward, the data in exchange for immunity. No Nuremberg. No trials. No consequences. Shiro Ishii, the program's commanding officer, died in Tokyo in 1959 of throat cancer. Of old age. In his own bed. What the declassified record doesn't address cleanly, what my grandfather's box suggested existed, was a secondary facility. Not in Manchuria. Not on the mainland. On an island. A small island with a two-word name that someone crossed out in pen. I found a reference to it in a document obtained through a FOIA request filed not by me but by a journalist named Patricia Sohn in 1998. The document was a memo, Internal Navy Intelligence, dated February 1947. Heavily redacted. But one passage had survived the black bars. Facility 9 materials transferred per Whitecap Agreement. Island designation to be removed from Allied cartographic record effective Q2 1947. Estimate, redacted, deceased on site, disposition of remains, redacted. Scientists associated with the program have been, redacted, per terms previously outlined. Whitecap. I searched that word for 3 months. I found one other reference to it in the public record. A single line in a Navy budget allocation document from 1948. Listing a disbursement to a civilian contractor for geological survey and site remediation. Whitecap coordinates. Remediation. The word used when you're cleaning something up. The word used when something is contaminated. I found Patricia Sohn. It took me 6 weeks. She wasn't easy to find because after 1999 she essentially stopped publishing and moved to a small town in Oregon where she teaches community college English and does not discuss her previous career. She agreed to one phone call. She told me that after she filed the FOIA request and received the partially redacted memo, she had been visited by 2 men at her apartment in Seattle. She described them as polite. Professional. Not threatening, she said, just very clear. They told me the story I was chasing didn't exist, she said. And then one of them put a folder on my kitchen table and said, "This is everything that's in the public record on this topic. As you can see, there's almost nothing there. We'd hate for you to spend years of your career on almost nothing." She said the folder was thin. Maybe 20 pages. She said she read it that night after they left. She said, "It was thin because it was curated. Every document in there was technically real, technically declassified, but together they told a story that went nowhere. A story shaped specifically to make a reporter feel like she'd found the bottom of something when she actually just found the ceiling of what they were willing to show." I asked her what she thought was really on the island. Long pause. 60,000 is the number I kept coming back to, she said. From multiple independent sources, none of whom had talked to each other. I couldn't verify it. I still can't. But 60,000. Another pause. The Nagasaki bomb killed 40,000 people on the day it dropped. And nobody knows this island's name. The island exists. I know what it's called now. I'm not going to print the current name because I've thought carefully about what good it would do and decided the answer is none, and because, and I want to be straightforward about this, I received a phone call 3 weeks ago from a number that traced to a Washington, D.C. area code, and the man on the line was very polite and very clear and told me that my grandfather's service record was a matter of ongoing historical sensitivity, and that he hoped I was approaching my research with appropriate discretion. I asked him how he knew about my research. He said, "We've always known about it. We just prefer these things stay quiet. The island has a new name. It has a tourism board. It has a ferry schedule and a hotel with a pool and a restaurant that serves fresh fish and cold beer and a view of the Pacific that people photograph and post and describe as paradise." The soil remediation report from 1948, the one document I found that references Whitecap's cleanup operation, described the work as surface level stabilization, not deep excavation, not removal. Surface level. Whatever is in that ground, 60,000 people's worth of whatever is in that ground, they didn't dig it up. They just smoothed it over and put a gift shop on top. My grandfather's map is in a safety deposit box now. The photograph is with it. I've made copies and given them to 2 people I trust, with instructions. I keep thinking about what he wrote on that photograph. After. He was there after. Which means he saw it. Which means whatever the Whitecap agreement covered up, whatever was remediated and renamed and quietly absorbed into the post-war Pacific, a 24-year-old Navy intelligence officer from Columbus, Ohio stood in the middle of it, and came home and put it in a box in his attic and spent 67 years never saying a single word. Not because he'd forgotten. Because he'd understood, very clearly, that some things are bigger than what one person can say out loud. I used to think silence was cowardice. I'm starting to think sometimes it's just the math, the cold, clear calculation of what saying something costs against what it changes. The tourists are booking their summer trips right now. The hotel has 4-star reviews. The fish is supposed to be incredible. Tell me, if you found out the place you'd vacationed, the place you'd walked barefoot and called paradise, was built on top of something like this, would you want to know? Or would you rather keep the photograph of the sunset? I've been asking myself that question for 14 months. I still don't have a good answer. Neither did my grandfather. The following is documented, verifiable history. Unit 731 existed. Its scientists received immunity from the United States in exchange for research data. Shiro Ishii was never prosecuted. The immunity arrangement, known in some documents as the NATO deal, was partially declassified in the 1990s. The specific island, Facility 9, Whitecap, and all personal details in this narrative are fictional. The moral architecture they describe is not. The number 60,000 is fictional. The practice of granting immunity to war criminals in exchange for useful data is not. My grandfather was a real person. He did keep his silence. The box is fictional. The silence was real. The elder wouldn't cross the town line. Not even for money. Not even when I told him I had a daughter inside. He just looked at me and said, "The ranch is where the door is. The town is where it opens." Then he got back in his truck and drove away, and I stood on the edge of Ballard, Utah at 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday in October, watching his taillights disappear, holding a flashlight and a recorder and absolutely nothing else useful. My daughter was at a sleepover 4 miles down that road. I went in anyway. I want to be clear about something before I keep going. I am not a paranormal investigator. I'm not a journalist. I'm a 38-year-old middle school science teacher who moved to the Uinta Basin in 2021 because rent was cheap and I needed a fresh start after my divorce. I don't believe in skinwalkers. I don't believe in portals. I barely believe in God on a good day. What I believe in now is a little harder to categorize. I first heard about Ballard from a woman named Connie Rayburn at a school board meeting in Roosevelt. She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to another woman, loudly, with the particular energy of someone who has said something so many times it has stopped feeling real to them. I was 3 seats away, half listening, grading papers. I heard the words same dream and same night and looked up. 6 families, Connie was saying. Same nightmare. Same dates. For 3 years straight. My cousin's family was one of them. They left in '98 and she still won't say what the dream was. She'll talk about almost anything. That woman will tell you her entire medical history in a grocery store line. But ask her about the dreams and she goes completely quiet. I introduced myself after the meeting. Connie gave me a long look, the kind that means you don't know where you've moved to yet, do you? And then she told me what she knew. 6 families in Ballard, Utah. Starting in 1994 and running through 1997. On specific nights, she didn't know which ones, but her cousin had described them as the low nights, when the valley sat wrong. Every adult in all 6 households would have the same dream. Not similar. Not thematically related. The same dream. Down to specific details they confirmed with each other afterward, in whispers, over fence lines, in the specific way you share information when you're not sure you want to be believed. 3 families eventually left. One family, the Graff family, 5 members, disappeared in the spring of 1997. No forwarding address, no goodbye, one morning just gone. The county found their house empty, their car in the driveway, food still in the refrigerator, a child's homework half finished on the kitchen table. Case number UT 97-1142 MP. Still open. Still unresolved. 2 families stayed. They don't give interviews anymore. I want to tell you I started looking into this because of journalistic curiosity, or a desire for truth. But the honest answer is that I started looking into it because my daughter Marisol became friends with a girl named Petra, and Petra's family was one of the 2 who stayed. Petra's last name is Aldecoa. Her parents are Tomas and Renata Aldecoa. They have lived in Ballard since 1991. They were there for all 3 years of the dreams. They are, as far as I can tell from a year of careful, gentle, completely not trying to be weird about it observation, perfectly normal people. Except for 2 things. They don't sleep in the same room anymore. Tomas sleeps on the couch. Renata sleeps in the master bedroom with the door locked. I found this out from Marisol, who found it out from Petra, who said it like it was just a fact, the way kids say things that adults have stopped seeing. And they don't have clocks in the house. Not a single one. No clocks on the wall, no microwave display, no clock on the oven. The cable box is unplugged, not turned off, unplugged, the cord coiled neatly behind it. Every device that shows a time is either covered, unplugged, or missing. I noticed this the first time I picked Marisol up and assumed it was a lifestyle thing. A screen time thing. Something from a podcast. I stopped assuming that the night Renata walked me to my car and said, very quietly, without looking at me, "Make sure your daughter doesn't tell Petra what time it is. About anything. Just please. It's easier." I didn't ask what she meant. The way she said it made asking feel dangerous. That's the thing about real fear. It doesn't announce itself. It just quietly rearranges the furniture of your life until nothing is where you left it. I found the elder through a contact at the Ute Indian tribe of the Uinta and Ure Reservation. I'm not going to use his name because I didn't ask his permission and because I think, given everything, it's the right call. He agreed to meet me once. A diner in Roosevelt. He ordered coffee and didn't touch it. I asked him about the dreams. He looked at the table for a long time. Then he said, "Those families were chosen. I don't mean chosen like a blessing. I mean chosen the way a lock chooses a key. Something needed to know who was there. Who was permeable. Who could be used? I asked. Used for what? Practice, he said. And then he wouldn't say anything else about it. I asked him about Skinwalker Ranch, the famous property 4 miles east, the one with the television shows and the cameras and the research teams. He almost smiled. Not warmly. The ranch is loud, he said. It attracts attention because it's supposed to. You want people looking there. He pointed east vaguely, toward where the ranch would be. Then he turned his finger and pointed west, toward Ballard. That's the distraction. What's in that town doesn't want cameras. It has been very careful about that for a very long time. I asked him what was in the town. A way through, he said. It's been open since before your people came here. It doesn't open all the way. Just enough. Just to look. That was when I told him my daughter was sleeping over at the Aldecoa house. That was when he wouldn't cross the town line. Marisol was fine. Obviously. She came home the next morning with paint on her hands and a friendship bracelet and zero awareness that her mother had spent the night parked 200 yards outside the Aldecoa property, unable to make herself drive away, watching the lights in the windows and jumping at every sound. But she told me something over breakfast that I've been sitting with ever since. She said Petra woke up in the middle of the night. Not scared, not crying, just awake. Sitting up in bed, completely calm, staring at the window. Marisol asked her what was wrong. Petra said, "It's time. But we're not allowed to say what time." Then she lay back down and went to sleep like nothing happened. Marisol thought it was funny. A weird sleepover story. She was already half laughing when she told me. I waited until she left for school to call Renata. Renata picked up on the first ring. Like she'd been waiting. I told her what Marisol told me. There was a long silence. Then Renata said, "Which window was Petra facing?" I didn't know. I said I didn't know. Another silence. Longer. "It's okay," Renata finally said. "Probably okay. The ones that just look, they don't do anything. They just look. It's when Petra starts going to the window that we..." She stopped. "That you what?" I asked. The line was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, "We have a system. For those nights. We've had a lot of practice." She hung up before I could ask anything else. I've been trying to find the Graff family for 8 months. Case number UT97-1142MP is real. You can call Duchesne County and ask about it, though they'll tell you it's an old missing persons file and they have no updates. The responding officer retired in 2004. I found him living in St. George. He agreed to one phone call. He told me the Graff house had been immaculate. Disturbingly so, given that the family hadn't packed anything. Not a suitcase. Not a photo. Not their daughter's stuffed rabbit, which was still on the pillow of her perfectly made bed. He said the only unusual thing, the thing that hadn't made it into any official report because he hadn't known how to write it down, was the mirrors. Every mirror in the Graff house had been covered. Bedsheets, towels, a tarp in the bathroom. All of them covered carefully, completely, from the inside. Like they'd done it themselves. Like they'd had time to do it before whatever came next. In my experience, the officer told me, when people cover mirrors, they're either sitting Shiva or they don't want something to see its own reflection. He paused. The Graffs weren't Jewish. I asked him what he thought happened to them. "I think they found a way out," he said. "I just don't know which direction they went. I drove through Ballard last week. Just through. I didn't stop, didn't get out, kept the windows up even though it was warm. It's a tiny town. Handful of houses. A grain elevator. A road that goes in and a road that goes out. The kind of place you drive through and forget before you hit the highway. Except I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. On 4 of the houses I could see clearly, the windows on the west-facing side were covered from the inside. Bedsheets. Towels. A tarp in one bathroom window. Whatever has been looking into that town for 30 years, whatever practices on the families who are permeable enough to dream the same dream on the same night, I don't think it's gotten bored. I think it's gotten better. Marisol wants to sleep over at Petra's again next Friday. I haven't told her no yet. I'm not sure, no, is the kind of thing that helps here. I need to ask you something, and I need you to actually think about it before you scroll away. Have you ever had a dream so specific, so detailed, that you described it to someone and they went pale, because they'd had the exact same one? Tell me in the comments. Tell me the date it happened. I want to see if the dates match. I have a feeling they will. Ballard, Utah is a real unincorporated community in Uinta County. Skinwalker Ranch is a real property approximately 4 miles east. The Ute Nation's historical relationship with the land in the Uinta Basin is documented and real. The Graff family, the Aldecoa family, case number UT 97-1142MP, and all nightmare events described in this story are fictional. The elder's quote is fictional. The specific claims about shared dreams are fictional. The feeling that something is looking through your west-facing window right now is, unfortunately, your problem. The postmark on every letter came from a town called Velum, Ohio. Velum, Ohio has no post office. It hasn't had one since 1987. It doesn't have a zip code, a mail carrier, or a forwarding station. It doesn't even have a gas station anymore. But 7 letters, addressed to 7 families in 4 different states, were postmarked from there on the same Tuesday morning in March 2021. The FBI knows this. I know they know this because an agent named Carla Dupree told me, off the record, in a Panera Bread parking lot in Columbus at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, in the specific tone of voice people use when they are telling you something they have decided they will deny telling you, that the postmarks were the part that made her lose sleep. Not the letters, she said. Not the details in them. The postmarks. Because that's not a mistake. That's not careless. That's someone telling us exactly how untouchable they are. I'm a true crime podcaster. Mid-size audience, nothing viral, the kind of show that gets 5-star reviews from people who say it changed how they think about the justice system. I've covered cold cases before. I've talked to detectives and prosecutors and grieving parents, and I thought, genuinely thought, that I had developed a reasonable tolerance for the worst things people do to each other. I had not accounted for this. The first letter went to a woman named Diane Crowell in Akron, Ohio. Her daughter, Megan, was 23 when she was killed in 2019. The case is technically open. Practically, it is a file in a drawer in a building where other files and drawers take precedence. Megan was found in the parking structure on East Mill Street on a November morning, and the investigation produced a suspect who produced an alibi, and the alibi held, and that was essentially the end of it. Diane received the letter on March 9, 2021. She told me about it in the measured, careful way that people describe things that have permanently rearranged them. It was handwritten, she said. Good handwriting. Not fancy, just clear. Like someone who'd been taught to write carefully and still did. She paused. The first line said, I've been thinking about Megan for 2 years and I owe you an explanation, not because it will help, but because she deserves to have someone say out loud what happened to her. She stopped there. I waited. He described the parking structure, she finally said. The smell of it. The specific sound her shoes made on the concrete. The color of her coat. Her voice stayed even in the way that takes practice. He described things the police had never released. Things I didn't know. Things that could only have been. She didn't finish that sentence. She didn't need to. The letter ended with, I am sorry. I know that word has been emptied out by people who say it without meaning it. I mean it in the original sense. I am in sorrow. There is a difference. I hope someday you can feel that difference, even if you can't forgive it. No name. No return address. Postmarked Velum, Ohio. Here is what I can tell you about the other 6 letters without violating the agreements I made with the families who spoke to me. All 7 victims were killed between 2017 and 2020. Different states: Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia. Different demographics, different circumstances, No apparent connection between the victims that law enforcement has been able to establish publicly. For women, 2 men, 1 teenager. All 7 letters arrived on March 9, 2021. All 7 were handwritten, in the same hand, confirmed by a forensic document examiner the FBI consulted in April 2021. All 7 contained details that had never been released to the public. All 7 were apologetic in tone. Not remorseful in the way someone performing remorse is remorseful, not theatrical, not excessive. Just quiet. Specific. Personal. Several families used the same word to describe reading them: intimate. Like receiving a letter from someone who had known your loved one well and was writing to share a memory. The FBI has had the letters since April 2021, when the second family to receive one contacted their local field office. By June 2021, they had confirmed all 7, confirmed the handwriting, confirmed the details, and opened a formal investigation under case file CR 2021-047883CLM, which I obtained a partial reference to through a FOIA request that came back 90% redacted. What Agent Dupree told me in the Panera parking lot, in a voice that had gone very flat and professional, was this: "We have a person of interest. We've had a person of interest since August 2021. We cannot place him at any of the 7 scenes. We cannot break his alibi on any of the 7 dates. We have his handwriting, and we have letters, and in the American legal system, writing a letter is not a crime." I asked her if she thought he'd kill again. She looked at her coffee for a long time. "No," she said. "That's the part one can't make fit. He's done. Whatever this was, it's finished. He just wanted them to know that. The most terrifying killers aren't the ones who want to get caught. They're the ones who confess because they've already calculated, with complete accuracy, that it doesn't matter." I found Vellum, Ohio through a county records database. It's an unincorporated community in Muskingum County, about 60 miles east of Columbus. Population, at the last census that bothered to count it, 41 people. 1 road in. Same road out. The post office closed in 1987 when the building was condemned. Mail for Vellum residents has been routed through a carrier stationed in Zanesville ever since. There is no postmarking equipment in Vellum. There has not been postmarking equipment in Vellum for 37 years. I drove there on a Thursday in October because I am apparently the kind of person who drives to unincorporated communities in Ohio on Thursdays in October. It took me 40 minutes from the highway. The road narrows down to single lane for the last 2 miles, and the trees come in close on both sides, and by the time I got to what I'd call the center of town, a grain elevator, a shuttered diner, 6 houses visible from the road, the late afternoon light had gone flat and gray and the whole place felt like somewhere that had been quietly waiting for something for a very long time. I knocked on 3 doors. 2 people answered. The first, an older man who gave his name as Gerald, told me he didn't know anything about any letters and then closed the door before I finished the sentence. The second was a woman in her 70s who invited me in for coffee and told me, in the conversational tone of someone discussing the weather, that a man had come through Vellum in late February 2021. "Stayed for maybe a week," she said. "Rented the Hartley place, the empty house on the East End. The family lets it sometimes for hunting season. Kept to himself. Polite when I saw him at the end of the driveway. Had good manners." I asked her what he looked like. She described him carefully. Average height. Medium build. Light hair going gray. Somewhere between 50 and 65. She said he had the kind of face that you could look at and then not quite reconstruct afterward. "The kind of face that doesn't stick," she said, and then looked slightly unsettled by her own description. I asked if anyone had come to Vellum asking about him after he left. "Oh yes," she said pleasantly. "Several young men in dark cars. Very polite. They walked around the Hartley place for a day or 2 and then left." She poured more coffee. "Same kind of polite as him, actually. Professional polite. The kind where you can tell they've been trained to be polite, but they haven't stopped to feel it." She paused. "I assumed they knew each other," she said. "Same school, maybe. I need to tell you about the 8th letter. There are only 7 families. 7 victims, 7 letters, a closed set confirmed by Federal Case File CR 2021-047883 CLM. The 8th letter wasn't sent to a family. It was sent to a podcaster in Columbus, Ohio, postmarked from Vellum, Ohio, dated March 9, 2023, exactly 2 years to the day after the original 7. It was sent to me. I want to be precise about my reaction, because I think imprecision here would be dishonest. I didn't scream. I didn't drop it. I stood at my kitchen counter at 8:15 in the morning with a cup of coffee going cold beside me, and I read it 3 times, very carefully, the way you read something when you're trying to make sure you're understanding it correctly. The handwriting matched the photographs Agent Dupree had shown me, off the record, in the Panera parking lot, with the specific caveat that she would say she hadn't. The letter said, "You've been asking the right questions in the wrong direction. You keep looking for what I did, and why I stopped. You should be asking why I started writing. The families deserve to know. That's not complicated. What's complicated is that I knew telling them wouldn't change anything for me legally, and I did it anyway, and I've been trying to understand for 2 years what that means about what's left of me. I don't think you'll be able to find me. Not because I'm careful, I am, but that's not the reason. The reason is that you're looking for someone who fits a story you already have. I don't fit it. Keep asking questions. Not for the case. For Diane. For the others. I'm sorry you're involved in this. I'm not sorry I wrote to you. It was signed, at the bottom, with a single letter. Not a name. 1 letter. I'm not going to print it here. I've thought about this carefully and decided that whatever he wants from printing it, I'm not going to give him. But I've looked at that letter every day for 7 months. And I still can't decide if it's a threat, a confession, or the loneliest thing I've ever read. Agent Dupree called me 4 days after the letter arrived. I hadn't contacted her. I'd contacted no one. I was still deciding what to do. She knew about the letter before I told her. I asked her how. She said, "We've been monitoring your mail since June. We should have told you. I apologize for that." A pause. "We've been monitoring the mail of everyone who has been investigating this case publicly. We thought he might reach out." I asked her if he'd reached out to anyone else. She was quiet for a moment. "There's a journalist in Louisville," she said, "and a retired detective in West Virginia who worked one of the original cases. They both received letters on March 9th. Same day as mine. 3 letters, 2 years after the original 7, all on the same date, all from a town with no post office." I asked her, and I want to be clear that I asked this calmly, with what I think was reasonable journalistic detachment, whether she believed the person of interest they'd identified in August 2021 was actually capable of this. Not the killings. I meant this. The letters. The precision. The dates. The postmarks. The sense, underneath all of it, of someone who had planned not just what to say but exactly how it would land, exactly what it would do to the people who received it, exactly how long it would sit with them. Dupree was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "That's what keeps me up at night. Not catching him. That question. Whether a person capable of that kind of care is the same person who did what he did to those 7 people. Whether both of those things can live in the same body." She paused one more time. "And the answer I keep coming back to is yes. Obviously, yes. That's what makes him so hard to find. He's not what we built our tools to catch." I haven't received another letter. March 9th, 2024 came and went. I checked my mail every day for 2 weeks. Nothing. Either he's done reaching out, or he's moved on to someone else, or, and this is the thought I sit with most, he's waiting for something specific before he writes again. The families are still living with their letters. Diane Crowell told me she's read hers so many times she has it memorized. She said she keeps it because it's the only thing she has that proves someone was with Megan at the end. That someone knows what her last moments were. "I know what he is," she told me. I haven't forgotten what he is. But that letter is also evidence that she existed and mattered enough for someone to carry for 2 years. She looked at her hands. I don't know what to do with both of those things being true at the same time. Neither do I. The FBI case is still open. The person of interest is still a person of interest. The Hartley place in Vellum, Ohio is empty again. And somewhere, a man with a face that doesn't stick is either writing another letter or deciding he's finally said enough. I want to ask you something. If you received a letter like that, if the person who took someone you loved wrote to you and said I'm sorry in a way that you knew, somehow, was real, would you want it? Would you read it? Would you keep it? Because I've asked that question to everyone I know, and the answer is almost always the same. And the answer scares me more than the letters do. The following story is a work of fiction. The families, victims, Agent Dupree, and case file CR 2021-047883 CLM are fictional. Vellum, Ohio is fictional. The letters are fictional. The moral questions they raise are not. If you are a family member of an unsolved homicide victim and have received unusual correspondence, contact your local FBI field office. The National Center for Victims of Crime helpline is 1-855-4 The eighth letter is real in the only way fiction can be real. It was written to make you feel something true. You felt it. You know you did.